During the current crisis unfolding in Myanmar, events are happening so fast that it can feel challenging to keep up with them. Although we're working to increase our podcast production far beyond what we've ever done before to meet the needs of this ever-changing crisis, we feel that the podcasts alone still do not address the full range of everything going on. So we encourage you to also check out the blogs on our website, insightmyanmar.org. Also feel free to check out our other social media sites. Just look for Insight Myanmar or Burma Dhamma on your preferred platform. And to engage in this topic more deeply and discuss with other practitioners, head over to the Facebook group, Meditation in Burma/Myanmar. With that, let's head to our show.
Yes, we need to know Myanmar, Jama Dendu, Mimia in a better deal, Sayamu, Tishimu by Mava, and
Buduani, making a Jampamuma, Yetamu, generally near the Dr. Nayagani, Power Board. Taha, Mutumi never does sign a case of Hope, Dugani line at the sign a case of Pipale. Jampamumia, Sonda Babiosia, Generally a Draco Bogdaniago.
The Bleeding Sky by Bidu Yahan. Here an open bleeding sky, saluted by crossed fingers for everyone to see, a soaring wailing to cry, telling as it lingers, begin again to free. Red water slowly finds its way, collects its power in unity and numbers, never makes stops or goes astray, and sooner or later gets joined by thunder, pushes and peaks, roaring under wrapped rain. Your wishes and strifes were all not in vain. So let it fall, pour down and touch us all, soak right through this blinded season, gather strength and commence, where open hearts never depart, and injustice are met with reason. Tuay tan ye ye kaungin, Bidu Yahan yi ta di. Na sen ji ba. Kan kaungjin thinke da ga aလေးပြုနေတဲ့သွေးတန်ရဲနေသောကောင်းကင်ပြင်တစ်ခုလူတိုင်းမြင်နိုင်ဖို့ငိုကြွေးမြည်တမ်းနေမှုတစ်ခုဝိဝဲနေရင်ပြောနေတာကလွတ်မြောက်ဖို့တဖန်စတင်အောင်မယ်လားရလန်းကိုတဖြည်းဖြည်းဖော်ဆောင်နေတဲ့နီမြန်းသောရေတွေစီးလုံးမှုအင်အားနဲ့ပေါင်းစည်းမှုအင်အားကိုစုဆောင်းရင်းဘယ်တော့မှရက်ဆိုင်ခြင်းသွေးဖိခြင်းများမရှိအနှေးနဲ့အမြန်မိုးချုံတန်ကလည်းပူးပေါင်းလာမယ်တွန်းထိုးယုံတက်ရင်ထစ်ချုံမိုးတဲ့ဟစ်အော်နေတယ်မင်းတို့ရဲ့စန္ဒတွေနဲ့အားထုတ်မှုတွေအားလုံးဟာအလကားမဖြစ်သွားဘူးဒီတော့ရွာပါစေသဲပါစေငါတို့အားလုံးရွှဲရွှဲဆိုပါစေဒီမြက်ကန်းရာသည့်အခါကြီးတစ်ခုလုံးရွှဲနစ်ပါစေအင်းအားမွေးလို့ဘယ်တော့မှထွက်ခွာမသွားမဲ့ဖွင့်ထားတဲ့နှလုံးသားတွေမှာအစာပြုကြမယ်မတရားမှုအတွက်အကြောင်းပြချက်ပေးနေတဲ့နေရာတွေမှာအစာပြုကြမယ်
right, so I'm really pleased to be joined by someone who's spent years researching gender, women's rights, and violence against women in Burmese society. So thanks so much for taking the time to join us on Inside Myanmar podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So these are huge topics that you're covering. They're subjects of enormous importance, and we're really grateful to have you on this episode, informing and educating our audience about your findings. I have to say, in talking about this issue, there's, of course, a huge disconnect between what was seen during the reforms of the 2010s and what we're experiencing now during the coup. And we're definitely going to be getting into this later in the conversation. But before that, let's talk about your findings leading up to February, and then get into the more recent issues since the coup. Actually, let's go back even further and go into traditional family structure and gender roles and expectations in Myanmar. For listeners who might not know much about this, how would you characterize this?
The traditional Myanmar family structure is the main character of the family is, of course, man, the father or grandfather or the son is an important figure of the family. So we can say that it's a patriarchal society where men are seen as the breadwinner leader of the family, where women in this case are the granddaughters, daughters or wives who are supposed to support the men in the family settings. So in general, men will be leading the family and the woman will be supporting the family. That's how it's supposed to look like in the ideal family, Myanmar family.
Right. And how would you say traditional Buddhist beliefs have played a role in supporting this dynamic?
Well, in terms of the family dynamic, the power in the family dynamics is very important when you try to understand Myanmar family. That's pretty much drive on the traditional Buddhist belief called Po. Po, I believe that those of you who are familiar with Myanmar context are very much aware about the term for Po, where man superiority is perceived, where men are perceived as superior to women because they have Po, and this also pretty much can be refer to the Buddhist practice. In Buddhist practice, where men can only become a monk and women cannot. They can only be nun, which are secondary to the monks. So this poem pretty much decides the secondary status of the women in the family.
Right. And we should say that when you mentioned men can be monks and women can be nuns, to clarify, men can be bhikkhus, which is in line with the order going back to the time of the Buddha. Women in Myanmar cannot be bhikkhuni. In Myanmar, that order is considered cut off. There are attempts to bring it back, but those have so far been unsuccessful. They can only be what's called a thilashin, which is right, which is basically like a 10 precept practitioner. Monks follow 227 precepts. Nuns follow something more than that. I think it's like 315. The number could be off, but the thilashin can follow only 10 precepts. And so because the merit that one is owed in spiritual practice in Myanmar is often determined by the precepts and the ethics that you're following, this automatically would place them at a lower level.
Yeah, that's correct. I think that's what what it looks like in Buddhist. Where people aspire to become monks or nuns. In that is more the or the religious part. I think in the social settings, we don't pretty much think a lot about these type of things, but there is already in Myanmar society a widespread belief that only uh, men who can become monks have Paul. That's why they are superior. And women who cannot become monks, or women who who don't have Paul, they are not as superior as men. They are inferior to men. That's why uh, men and women are different and are treated differently.
Right. And we should mention that pon is, if you put it in a word, ponji, that is the Burmese word for monk, so ponji, great pon, is actually the Burmese language word they use to describe a monk. And I think we actually have to go back a little bit, because we've been using pon contextually and talking about how it means and its role in society, but I don't know if you've actually given a definition of it for English speaking listeners who might not actually know what that word means.
It's a spiritual belief. I can only provide a definition from the layman perspective, because I'm not very religious as well. I have to admit that. But in layman terms, we understand that Pong is hard to define, but it's just a belief. It's widespread. It's just a belief that men have this superior quality. It's very abstract idea, but it's just that it's already socialized and internalized in our minds that men have homes. So regardless of their men position in the workplace or in anywhere, because they have that abstract, abstract what is a quality, superior quality. They are superior, so they cannot be. They shouldn't be challenged, or they should always be treated as different from women. That's the widespread belief, and we understand from the feminist point of view as patriarchal, that the social norms and the religious norms are intertwined and entrenched in our society. It's very much difficult to distinguish up to now, that these are very intertwined now. And we don't even challenge this type of belief anymore. We just assume that men are superior and women are not superior. That's why you, in social settings, in family settings, you don't see women sarong and men undergarments and women undergarments should not be washed together. So that's how we were taught since childhood, because our undergarments, women undergarments, will diminish the status of Pong from men. So men shouldn't be touched by those women undergarments. That's the socialization, and that's the things that we were learned in our childhood, and those are internalized, and we don't ever question about these anymore.
Right. And this is going back to a Burmese cultural belief within Buddhism that it is greater karma to be born as a man. And so that gives this abstract notion of Pon. So Myanmar has shifted from being led by a king to being a colonial state to becoming independent. It's then overseen by a military dictatorship. So it's gone through these different convulsions of leadership and organization. What have you seen in how these changing tides of history have affected the role of women both in society and in the family?
As a generation, because I'm part of the younger generation, so I don't have very much a knowledge about what had happened before the colonial period. But I started seeing the findings and evidence and literature starting from the colonial period. Of course, there were some literature that we used to learn in our childhood about the powerful queens in the past and how they influenced their court politics, etc. But they were all in Myanmar history books, and it's difficult for us to say definitively about these from my perspective. But in my work, I look at the literature starting from the colonial, post-colonial period, and also I continue studying the women situation during the military leadership, and also during the transition period and up until now. So I believe that there used to be two narratives in the literature where some people said that the status of Myanmar women are high and compared to our neighbors like India or China. And we also found those type of writings. Some of you may be already aware also that during the colonial period, where the scholars documented and saw Burmese women and not needing to change their last name, and they saw women economic participation, and then they also saw greater freedom. So I think that because as a young person, I could only rely on the literature. So because I did not see that part, so I cannot argue definitively. However, that narrative, I think that narrative was carried on by also Burmese elite women who were part of the anti-colonial movement, or who enjoyed more greater freedom in our society, especially during the military dictatorship period. So I think that during that period, powerful women, especially the elite women, had a voice, in terms of women rights situation. However, that changed when the transition started in 2010, and I think because the country opened up, and there were also more studies and more younger generation also study about women situation in Myanmar, and it was the time that where intersectional feminism started to thrive, and we started seeing that yes, it may be true that some powerful women enjoyed greater freedom in Myanmar society, but that may not be the case for a lot of women from different socioeconomic background. So therefore, we cannot conclude that the single narrative will be representative for all women. And we believe that the women in Myanmar society and their experiences are intersectional. And for example, myself, I do and I research violence against women. And one of my perspective, and also from the theoretical perspective, is that violence against women actually cuts across all socioeconomic background, and then it happens because of the gender inequality in society. So that's the perspective that I do my work, and from my findings and from my research since 2013, that violence against women actually we find that it cuts across all social class, regardless of your status or your education background and your economic background. But it's true that risk factors are more severe in the lower socioeconomic class. Um, so, uh, so I have to say that the arguments um, until 2021 was that um, some women enjoy freedom to some extent at the individual level, but when you start to communicate with people at the relationship level, or when you live at the society or community level, that individual freedom is compromised. And that's where the violence against women, violence experiences kicks in. So that's my reflection from my research work. Mm-hmm.
Right. So when one goes back and reads some of the colonial literature written by British, one of those things that does stand out are some of the British who've had in the 19th and early 20th century had experience of traveling around the world to other colonies and seeing other societies. They remarked about, in their views, how in comparison to some of these other countries, a higher level of freedom and agency that Burmese women had, and probably indeed when they were being compared to, Indian or Muslim societies at that time, that might have been true. And then following that, there have been Burmese authors who wrote supporting that kind of view as well. You reference a couple of famous ones in your writing, like Mi Khaing and Ma Thanegi, that really describe Burmese women with a sense of agency. The famous example is they're the ones who hold the purse of the money the husband makes, and cite some other examples of what kind of freedoms they have. And then on my own podcast a few months ago, I spoke to Mimi A, who is a famous foodie in England and has become an activist during this period. And when I asked her what she felt the gravest mischaracterization of in the Western press about Myanmar at this time was, the thing that irked her the most and frustrated her was that there was this sense of painting Burmese women as demure. That was the word she used. They were seen as demure. They were seen without agency, and that this was actually very much not the case, especially at the moment with, she mentioned it wasn't the case historically and cited some of those examples, but was not the case now either with what Burmese women were doing during the current protests. So all of these writings in a different way, whether we're looking at the early colonials, whether we're looking at some of the Burmese authors of an earlier generation, like Mi Khaing or Ma Thanegi, or whether we're looking at Mimi A today, they all in different ways portray Burmese females as having a sense of agency and empowerment. And you're saying that you're finding their perspective problematic. So what about their characterization do you see as incorrect or needing some kind of reworking?
I would say that first of all, we have to think about who writes. Does the author have the credibility? I mean, credibility in terms of, is she or is the author or is he informed by uh, are they informed enough, or are their works can make representation of the society as a whole? I think it's a very important point because I think that we need to be aware about generalizing experiences of women in Myanmar society, because it really is true that I have to say it's true that we have, to some extent, the Burmese women. I say Burmese, not other ethnic people. Burmese women have some greater freedom, but it is within the context of your higher education or your higher economic status. Because the more power you have, the more leverage you can make at your at your relationships. But as I mentioned before, that individual agency is compromised when you are dealing with your people, around your community or with your husband, etc. So I think that it's a very dangerous move to generalize uh, the entire population with single narrative. We always have to bear in mind that even though I have a greater freedom, doesn't necessarily mean that everyone will have that freedom. Of course, it would be great to have uh, freedom, for all women. I would be very happy to make that kind of generalization in my ideal world. But I think that it's not fair enough because the ones who are writing or who are making a voice on behalf of these women, we have, to some extent, we have greater freedom. We have privilege to say something. But what about those women who are suffering because they cannot? Nobody can hear them. They are shouting. They have agency, but everything else is not favoring to them. So I think that we have to be very careful to make a generalization.
Mm-hmm. The Me Too movement was really a watershed moment in the US in addressing gender inequality and encouraging women to speak out against harassment and rape. Mm-hmm. You've written a bit about how the Me Too movement came to Myanmar. Can you describe that here?
Yeah, it's also interesting that if we look at the other societies like Korea, Japan, or even Thailand, the Me Too movement, we felt their presence. Some of them were on the streets, and then some of them were, openly discussing about it as Me Too in other contexts. But as a researcher, I don't feel that presence, Me Too presence, quite strongly in our society. There were, of course, a few people talking about Me Too, and stuff, but we can't be sure that the Me Too movement is felt by the rural community or people who don't have access to social media and stuff. And there wasn't also a title, like, of course there were some I think that some kind of symbolic things like vagina monologue, for example, although it didn't say that it's the Me Too thing, but it's a bit of silent Me Too, according to the organizers. I agree to that too. But I think that the fact that vagina monologue itself is very, very much coming from the privileged people. So I think that we didn't see much of Me Too movement in Myanmar, but a part of the Myanmar society who is privileged and have access to social media, they started opening up, sharing their experiences. And there was also, I think, the significant milestone. Before that, it was talking about sex and all these vagina, all these things is pretty much taboo. And nobody, and especially women, no, they wouldn't dare to say it publicly. But I think that Me Too shifted the landscape for a bit, but not to the extent that I would love to see.
Right. And I think another factor in there It's just that as Me Too was taking off, the digital age was coming to Myanmar in a very different way. You know, this was a slow progression in terms of technology. In other countries, it feels, even in the US, it feels a bit overwhelming in how technology has come on like a wave, but it was kind of going from one step to another. In Myanmar, this really came overnight in terms of the access that was provided. And even then, I think that Me Too probably took off on Twitter more than any other platform. And before, a few months ago, Twitter was really very, very seldom used among Burmese people. So so that maybe also was a factor. So how do you see this digital or technological component factoring in with what Me Too was able to do and not able to do in Myanmar?
Well, I think technology, I think that it's really is a useful tool if you use it for some positive movements like Me Too. And of course, there were also other side effects. I think we wouldn't focus on that. But from my point of view, I think it's a great movement for Myanmar women too. It's not like, I think before like we have a problem, but we don't have a name for that. And now that somebody came up with a name, and we saw that it's happening everywhere. It's not alone. You are not alone. It's not that only Myanmar women are suffering this issue. In particular, I think that sexual harassment has been, has been in Myanmar society for a very, very long time. And it was only seen as trivial, like not important, not serious enough to pay attention from the policymakers' point of view as well. Because I think you may be also familiar that in rural society, it's courting. Even the parents or the villagers, the village elders, they would encourage this type of courting. It's a lovely practice where the single women, the girls and men, the boys, it's just part of the social practice. So I think that there's the courting practice, it has somehow transformed already into harassment, but we still see it as a very part of the Myanmar society. For example, I would say I go out on the street and some men sing love songs. When I walk on the street, I feel so much bothered by it. But the men think that, I don't know where it comes from. It will be a different another issue. The men, they feel they find pleasure, because some the girls, on the street, and it's not strange for them, to just sing, like it's just part of the social practice, that where people don't see it as a problem, but women, they have been suffering quite long, because it really diminishes your self-worth and also your individual and freedom, and also it also affects your mental health too. So I think that it's a very big issue from the women perspective, but it's not the same as important as for for society as a whole. So I think that Me Too, when it came, of course, when the social media, a lot of women already were using social media already. So when the Me Too came, we have a name now. So we started opening up. But I would say it ended somewhere, and it didn't, it wasn't as strong as other countries, I would say. I'm not sure why is it that exactly? That's why I think that we need more studies, to explore these type of issues. We just don't know why.
It's interesting how you reference that traditional courting practices from another generation, another era, maybe another century, now have elements in them that are seen as inappropriate in today's gender standards and gender roles. And it makes me think of, in some countries, the proper way of courtship and eloping in previous centuries was to actually kidnap the young girl that one wanted to marry and put her in a sack or something and take her away, and then that was seen as eloping, and that was at that time that was a commonly accepted practice. The woman knew it as well, the parents knew it, and of course that would be a very egregious kind of activity to do today when times and views and perspectives have changed and people's attitudes need to change along with them.
Yeah, very true. I agree with you. It's just that the time has changed, but the practice is still there, and it's really not, reasonable and relevant in this society, in this 21st century anymore. But I think no one seems to be bothered by that.
Right. And when we look at how the internet and technology and social media has come on and how that affected Me Too, I mean, these new features of social media, they certainly can carry forward the message of Me Too, but they could do other things as well. And as mentioned, Myanmar came online all at once, as opposed to other countries. We've seen the problems that Facebook did with the Rohingya crisis, for example. But how have you found the online culture has affected gender roles, violence against women, overall sexuality? Because even in our country, in US, there have been enormous studies on looking at how online culture has started to fundamentally affect some of these things in young people and teenagers, that how it's changing gender roles, sexuality, other kinds of things, the violence against women, other kinds of factors that are going off in unpredictable and new directions. So how are you finding online culture in Myanmar starting to affect those things?
I think that the first thing that I can pick on is because more and more women are now exposed to social media and also see what other fellow women, are doing in other society as well. So definitely the feminism, the belief that women and men should be equal. I think that everyone has started to internalize that belief from the woman's side, I would say, and also it's also partly due to the awareness raising the women rights organization have been doing, but to some extent, online empowerment and social media, lifestyle is also affecting women, women, um, women life. So I think that it has changed to some extent that before, for violence against women in especially, before, I think it was women were helpless, like nobody was there for them. But now they started seeing, all these sort of things through social media, and they know that they are not alone. This is a universal problem, and this is also a human rights violation. They started, accepting it, and they started to feel empowered. I think that has happened, in the past 10 years. But what makes it problematic is that men have not changed as much as that women have. So that's where I think that, because men, they wouldn't want to change because they're pretty much comfortable with what Myanmar society, patriarchal society, have to offer. It's just that women are not, it's not convenient for women. So they know that through social media that this is not acceptable, and they started, challenging men. So I think that from the men's side, they started to feel threatened. And that's why I think the violence incidents are partly, like being contributed by that aspect. I think that, but the point is that because of social media, women have changed, and they started, recognizing their self worth, and their also, their opportunities and also their rights. But there is also backlash and resistance from the other side. So I think that's the main issue that we are facing.
Right. So you talk about how social media has been used to advance some of these causes on the side of women, even if men haven't exactly caught up. What I'm curious about is the flip side of that. And what we've seen in US is an increased sexualization online. And where this sexualization goes can be a couple different directions. There could be what's called sex positive, where it could be the sexualization could be seen by those doing it as being something of empowerment and expression and liberating. And there could also be a sexualization that's exploiting, and that is objectifying. So there's a couple of different directions, but online sexualization is clearly a trend of how our own technological use in the US has gone. So I'm wondering what you've seen in terms of sexualization on the internet in Myanmar as it started to grow on social media.
Mm, well, this topic is pretty much new for me and also for our country as a whole, because we are. I would say that the social media, of course, somehow, um, I would say, because I think that the social media, for example, we seeing, especially this, I think the relationship level, uh, that where women are being trapped by the more open, uh, you know, uh, more open belief and perspective, and open to um, uh, the lifestyle, the global culture lifestyle. But they are also still trapped by the traditional belief. So let's say, for example, uh, there is a couple, and for example, before all these social media and stuff, premarital sex uh, is uh, is seen as something inappropriate, and it wasn't widely practiced in our culture. But I think that in the last 10 years, we have started seeing this practice, especially in the younger demographics. But the problem is that uh, it's still like, okay, they started going out, and the problem is that they started embracing this type of idea, but there isn't any open and frank discussion about what is going to happen next. So for the women part, um, yes, they started, having premarital sexual practice or intercourse, etc. But they believed that the man will marry them. But in from the man's side, uh, it is not what they don't know that they will be expected. So I think that it's just that we are in the middle, and where we don't know which values and which values and which values we should be pursuing. So I think that that's the situation that we have here. That's why we started seeing lots of relationship problems among the young couples, and there are also consequences of it, where people, especially they started um, fighting. They started fighting when the girls realized that the man is not going to marry them. They have already started living together already, and their expectation is that the man will marry them because they have lived together. But for the men part, it's not the case. So although I can't make generalization about it, I think that this is something that in the future, some scholars who have expertise on this issue should be exploring, like, because I think that's also the level, venues that where we also see the violence, the dating violence, and revenge pornography. So I think that this is an issue that is, that has to be explored and in the future.
Right. Yeah. And that's definitely been an issue in the US that's been gaining more and more interest in scholarship, as how this online culture is starting to sexualize young people earlier and earlier on in ways that previous generations were not. So moving on, your essay in T Circle Oxford explored if gender violence was passed down in Burmese family culture. What were your findings in this article?
Well, the findings I was writing based on my dissertation on the looking at the intergenerational violence against women. Actually, I have been researching this violence for a long time, and it seems like um, I'm not getting through. The messages are not getting through, and I started feeling like uh, the society as a whole, we don't care enough about women. We don't want to protect women. Of course, there are some individuals or organizations who are working tirelessly on this issue, but I have to say that the society as a whole, they have no willing to protect their own women. So I started exploring this intergenerational angle where you see that the violence actually transmits through the generations, and this is just my realization. Like last year, that I know that there are a lot of scholarship in the Asia Pacific and global studies as well that have been doing tremendous and incredible job in this angle, but for me, only a few last year or 1.5 years ago that I started looking at that angle. And that's when some of my previous confusion starting to be more clear. That I have now more clarity on this issue. That I now have some understandings and findings that uh, if you witness violence, uh, especially when between your parents, you learn, you see that violence as a normal behavior or as an appropriate way to resolve the conflict, and you started also replicating. You replicate this behavior in your adult life. So that's the findings that I found in my research, that the children of the violent homes, uh, they when you ask the women who experienced violence, they reported their history of witnessing their mothers being abused by their fathers. So we have a very clear link between these two variables, which is witnessing your parent abuse and being victimized by your partner. So there is already an association, and my point is that this violence will carry on, and we will also see in the next generation, because theory have already proven that there is a correlation, and even some pathways that prove that is directly associated between these two angles. So it's important for our society, because our society, the country we are, the family structure is very important for our society. So the country, if we say, something to break the family, it's not acceptable. Like that's why you see that women are, always asked not to leave the abusive husband, because for the sake of the children. And this is, what Myanmar, traditional family, you should have father, mother, and children. This is for children. But the thing I saw in my research is that, in fact, if you continue living with your violent husband or violent father or mother, it really affects your child's long-term development. And there is also a risk that that child will also do the same behavior in their adulthood.
And then if it is endemic in the culture, what can be done about it?
Actually, this issue, does not have a single solution. It has to be very holistic approach. You have to think about prevention efforts and at many levels, at the individual level, at the relationship level, also at the community and society level. But because we are talking about the family, so I would focus on the family level intervention, where you can start, looking at for example, positive parenting practices, promoting positive parenting practices in the family. I think that that's a very important start. And also, we can also promote like anger management, and also like conflict resolution skills for the marriage conflict. Those type of practical skills, I think, will be very important to intervene to break the family level violence.
How about the more formal provisions, such as legal regulations and such? So how does Burmese law itself protect or ignore the freedoms and rights of Burmese women? And then how is that law enforced?
Mm-hmm. So in terms of laws and provisions, I think that's where, the difficult, the challenge exists, because we still do not have the anti-violence, a comprehensive anti-violence against women law. So those of you who may have been working in this field know that the anti-violence against women law, POBAO, in short term, that it started drafting since 2013, and it was never able to pass until 2021. So it took 7 or 8 years for a law to to publish on the national media, not to the stage of passing. It took 8 years for women groups to advocate to pass this law, but the law was never passed. Why is that? I feel really sad that why is it so difficult for you, the policymakers, or for you as a government, to protect women who are suffering and who are being beaten at home? There is no protection for women who are being tortured by their own man or by their own father. So where should women turn to? That's the that's the reality. And of course there are some protections that are given to women, let's say some laws provide, for example, the Burmese women customary law for marriage. I don't remember the law name. It's quite a long name. It said that you can only leave, or you are only entitled to divorce for some reason. There is no explicit protection for women who are suffering emotional abuse or marital rape, for example, something like that. So I think it is quite how to say, vulnerable state for women who continue living in the abusive home, but no proper protection for them when they want to report to. So I feel that it's very important to have a law that protect women from violence against women.
Mm-hmm. And in the 2010s, we saw a number of changes as the country was going through greater freedoms and the transition. Looking at the perspective from this area specifically, looking at the changes that would impact women and protect them, you mentioned one of those bills, but overall, how was this period for the issues that you concern about? Were there other kinds of reforms or attempts taking place during this open window of greater freedoms and transition?
There was an interesting time where in 2015 the USDP led government, they passed the four race and religious law. You may be aware about it. So they passed and of course there were a lot of criticisms against this law, and surprisingly, there were also women supporters who are in favor of those laws. So one of their argument is that, and their favorite among the four laws is that the monogamy. And you can see why women are in favor of monogamy. Because women in Myanmar, they are, very frustrated and also and bothered by men having multiple partners. Because before that 2015 law, the Women Race and Religion Protection Law, it was legally okay for men to have second wife. And there are some complete specific part of it, but I wouldn't go into details. But the thing is that women were in favor of this monogamy law because they were so desperate, and that's why we started seeing, and the whole package is discriminatory, and they are still there, and there are also when people who are trying to push the NLD government to revoke those laws, but it never happened.
Right. So during this period, you certainly didn't see the kind of progress that you were hoping for.
To some extent, I would say when before starting from 2010 to 2015, because the country was starting to open, and there were also some motivation from the USDP-led government that they wanted to, get approval or some sort of positive, views from the international community or from the civil society. So they were pretty much very open about making new protection laws. For example, the policy, the 10-year national NASPO, we call it National Strategic Action Plan for Advancement of Women, where they have 10 areas, and based on the Beijing platform commitment. I wouldn't go into details, but of course, there are also frustrations about the stagnant progress of implementation of the policy. But nevertheless, there were some commitments we started seeing that was not seen during the military dictatorship. However, there were in 2015 there were a lot of high hopes because of the nationalist democracy government took the office, and the Aung San Suu Kyi state councillor was the women leader. So there were a lot of high hopes from the women groups as well, from also other groups. But in terms of the women rights, I think the NLD government struggled with other several issues and set aside the women issues. So there we didn't see much progress during those periods.
Mm-hmm. And you've written as well that the government does have a big potential role that it can play in this area. What would you say would be some reasonable actions that it could have taken, and what would have been the impact if it were able to push certain policy or rules forward that could really start to shift some of the more informal aspects of the culture?
I think that two things. The first thing is that the NLD government they faced so much criticism, and also with the Rohingya issue. So they were pretty much occupied by the Rohingya issue, and for the second point, I think that it's wrong to assume that when you have a women leader, the women issues will be prioritized. It was a wrong assumption. That's what. Although you have a women leader in the top position, it doesn't necessarily mean that they would be feminist. So I wouldn't say Aung San Suu Kyi is feminist. And also, again, going back to the our first narrative that we discussed, that Aung San Suu Kyi, the state councillor, also comes from the privileged background. So I think that her experiences and the greater freedom that she had, she even made some official, I think, speech mention about women and men are equal in Myanmar society. If you both strive and try enough, you will get that position. So I remember those sort of statements that she made in the past, from my memory. But my overall impression is that because the leaders, there are very few women leaders, but those women leaders don't represent and don't have this understanding of the intersectional nature of women experiences. That's why I think that they could have done better if they are armed with more this sort of knowledge and understanding, but it wasn't the case.
And if they could do better, what better could they have done? What kinds of legislation do you think would have been most effective for the kinds of problems and concerns that you're seeing?
Yeah, specifically the anti-violence against prevention and anti-violence against women law. There were already a lot of technical support given to the Ministry of Social Welfare, the gender focal department, and but the thing is that they didn't make use of those expertise and the opportunities well. I don't understand why it took such a long time for them to properly, accept or integrate the integrate the perspectives from the civil society organizations, because they were working very closely, at the policy level. Women rights organizations are there. They are international organizations are also there. They were part of the technical working groups, but there was so much. I think that the patriarchal belief entrenched in some of the older ministry, older ministry, the old belief about women issue not a problem in society. So they don't feel the need to address women rights issue because they don't see it as a problem, because everyone you see, next to you comes from higher status, higher socioeconomic background. So why, would you feel that, there is a need to address it? There is no problem for them. So they don't feel the need to solve it. So I think that if the ministries, integrated more, feminist policymakers, not necessarily have to be women, men too, feminist policymakers, and also ethnic from people from ethnic backgrounds and young people, I think that they would have made differently.
That's really interesting, and definitely a discussion going forward, depending on how things shape out. Concerning rape, you've mentioned there are challenges with even reporting cases in Myanmar, as victims and their families feel a sense of shame. So do you have any sense what the actual numbers are of rape in Myanmar and how that compares to other countries?
Well, the case, because I mostly research about intimate partner violence, so I know from my from the findings and from the Myanmar, existing data that it's nearly 3% of the population experience sexual violence from their intimate partners. But I can't provide the specific data for sexual violence by the non partner. But all I can say is that it is very underreported. Very underreported, and there is also like associated, as you mentioned, associated shame regarding sexual violence. Even at one of my recent research, there was a case that was reported to the legal service providers, but the family they don't want to pursue legal action, because it's something it's because there are consequences of the victim living with black spot in the society. It also goes back to the belief that what we also discussed, the premarital sex thing, because it's not acceptable in Myanmar society to have premarital sex, regardless of how and the children born out of wedlock is not acceptable. So it doesn't matter if you are raped or like you do it without consent or with consent. It doesn't matter. It's just a shameful. It's a shameful for the family, especially the fathers. The fathers, as a protector of the family, that person, the family is humiliated because they cannot, properly, protect the family, the daughter. So it's all mixed. It's not just about the women, suffering. It's also reputation of the family as a whole. So they wouldn't, do it. They wouldn't do something that will, make a black spot, to their family name. So we believe that is underreported, and it also is consistent with other patriarchal countries too. The global studies also have already proved that sexual violence is largely underreported. What we saw even in the prevalence studies is only iceberg of the tip of the iceberg.
Mm-hmm. And when rape is reported, what do you know about the legal process? Are suspects often questioned and arrested if found guilty?
I think it's very complicated. It's very complicated. I can't provide a legal perspective in that issue, but from my understanding and also from my experiences talking to the survivors of the sexual violence, especially, okay, if you are poor, it's very challenging for you to report violence due to the many associated costs. Even if you want to go to the report the police, or if you want to file the case, there are court procedures that are very costly for them. But now that there are many organizations who are providing legal aid for the rape survivors, but I think that the reach is still very not wide enough at the society level. There are many things that we need to do. So I mentioned one point, but another point is that if you come from more comfortable family, you wouldn't report it because it's a family reputation. You have to protect. The family reputation. So I think that there are many layers, around it. That's why I think we need proper, studies or scholarship or even in-depth studies about it. The thing is that we don't even have the focused violence against women studies yet. So we don't know the magnitude of the problem. So I think that there are so much more that we need to explore, and it's very important and serious issue that people pay attention to, in my opinion.
And you also write about male entitlement to sex and marriage, known as karma panglin. You write that this is partly an expectation of gender roles, and yet it also falls into domestic violence, which often gets unreported. Can you say more about this?
Well, it's also a very much important and sensitive topic for women, for women to discuss, because domestic violence has always been seen as an internal affairs, and it's very shameful to disclose your private life to the women, to other people. That's the widespread belief. But women do share those stories if you show them that you are you sympathetic and you understand and you are willing to listen. They do share those stories. So from my research and also a look reading from other studies, the physical, if you experience physical violence, if women experience physical violence, it's often sexual violence follows. So sexual violence and physical violence always happen together. So, but the problem is that we can't quite see it, in the studies. But a few qualitative studies have already showed that uh, many women in Myanmar society, in the family settings, they are experiencing this, but they don't have a name for that. Now that because of these service provision organizations, some women started to know this name, and they started to know that it's a problem, but it still is very difficult thing for them, because the as I mentioned before, if you don't have enough economic or education, if you don't have that like the power in your relationship level, it's really difficult for you to negotiate and challenge the male authority, because men, of course, they feel entitled to it. They always have this kind of access whenever they wish to. uh, and if wife refuse to this wish, to his wish, of course they women reported that the use of physical force is always the reason that why women experience sexual violence. And it's very sad, it's very sad, and it's more problematic at the lower socioeconomic level, because when you are poor, of course your house is also small, and you have other family members, and you sleep in the same room, and all those sort of things. Very complicated.
Mm-hmm. So you've studied the role of women by looking at these cultural and familial structures. And in doing so, some of your findings reveal the influence of Burmese Buddhism on gender roles. And we talked about that at the very beginning, exploring this idea of Pon and where that fit in, and views of karma. What I'm curious about is how these religious perspectives have operated at beyond the superficial level of lay society. So on my side, as someone who has spent many years in monasteries and meditation centers in Myanmar, and with so many monks and nuns as friends, I was really intrigued to consider the implications going back to the source. And as mentioned before our interview, several nuns have requested our platform to actually begin a series looking into gender attitudes within the Sangha for their benefit, which we were set to do before the coup broke. And this was already something on our radar, but as with everything else on our list and on the shelf, we've postponed that to be able to talk about stories that directly relate to the coup. So in a sense, this episode is kind of the first of the series, even though it's taking more of a lay perspective, and eventually we'll get around to really going into depth with some of the monastic and spiritual and religious perspective. But what I'd like to know from you is that if we're talking about this role that the Burmese Buddhist beliefs play on gender roles within lay society, what are your thoughts on how they're operating in monastic society?
Oh well, it also amazed me sometimes, how I mentioned also before, how individual freedom I have in my family, when I was growing up, and I never questioned about why I cannot go to some areas in, for example, Sri Lanka pagoda or other pagodas, and I feel very annoyed and also frustrated whenever I see those signs that women are not allowed to enter, because that's a sacred place, or that's a holy place. Only men, are allowed to enter. And I started questioning myself, that okay, then there is this very simple line that make women and men one men as superior and women as inferior. That's why I'm not supposed to enter and I am not allowed to enter. So what if that man is a thief? Does he still have more superior quality than me? This is the some thoughts process that I've always had in my mind, since I was childhood. And when I grow up, and now that I started, looking also other literature and listening to other people's perspectives, even some prominent monks uh, say that this was not what Buddhist taught. Of course, other people, can provide more insights on that. But from my perspective and from my understanding, and also what I learned from other people is that it's not Buddhist, taught what Buddhist taught us. Of course, there must have been some kind of religious practices in the past that is not very convenient for women to take part. For example, there used to be a time where we did not know that the sanitary pad exists, right? We only were introduced by sanitary pad not long ago. So now that the time has already changed, of course there were some reasons in the past that is appropriate for that kind of practice. But now that it's not relevant anymore, and why would I, as an individual, why would I, not be allowed when, for example, the man, from, like, from men, for example, thieves, or, like, some sort of, the murderer, for example, you know, when they can allow. So I think that these type type of things are still a mystery to me, and I would love to learn more about it, and because from as from the perspective of someone who do research on violence, because that belief is pretty much one of the main drivers of what is happening, to women lives, and we need more proper studies on that. And I can't be, like, I'm not convinced enough that why, some men uh, would be, more superior than me.
Right, sure. And I think that that would be a very complementary study to look at how these Burmese cultural interpretations of the Buddhist teachings are not only influencing casual, informal lay society at a superficial level, but how they're operating at a real depth in the heart of the spiritual and religious practice and order. And there's certainly a lot there that can be explored. Up to this point, so much of our conversation has centered on traditional Burmese society and family structure and what the civilian government was trying to do in the 2010s, as well as historically what we know about previous eras. Since February, of course, we're living in a very different world. So with that in mind, I think it'll be helpful to transition and gain an understanding of what we know about the military's past actions and perspectives concerning gender. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I think that from looking back, what they did during the military dictatorship, the it's also very complicated issue. It's not just about gender. It's also religious and also ethnic issue. And people believe that the military, if you are the minority, military soldiers, you won't be promoted to the very senior level. That's the assumption that ethnic people have, but that's a whole different issue. But for the military itself, is pretty much predominated. It's all men. It's the man club, and it's the man club, and they have this. I think that they have this because they are, the men and also Buddhist. Their superiority and the way they perceive, must be pretty high, and they only see women, as someone who should be the cultural bearers of the society, and who only see women as a supportive, to advance the military. So you can also see that when there was a time that where this women military wives something Myanmar women associations, or Myanmar maternal and children associations, they started establishing those associations where the women are the wives of the military men, and their job essentially is to promote the traditional status of women, and also to preserve the Myanmar culture, which is Myanmar Buddhist culture. So and they also have a history of violating ethnic women minorities' rights in the conflict affected areas. So so if we look at those periods, I don't think the future is quite favorable for women in terms of their rights.
Right. And you referenced their treatment of ethnic women, and certainly there's more than enough documented cases of the widespread rape that has taken place on the part of the military historically. I wonder if you have any theories on what is motivating this behavior. What symbolically is the rape serving? So not just to steal, to harass, even kill, but the rape component. What do you think is leading to that behavior, and what does it mean?
Oh, well, I think it's also a man fight. If you look at the Civil War, like your ethnic leaders are also men, and women, the military men. So it's a man fight. So as I mentioned to you earlier, that if your daughter is raped, it's the father reputation that if you don't do your job properly to protect your woman, your daughter, so you are your status as a man is is undermined by that. So I believe that this is the same attitude that the military men, especially the soldiers, have been doing. I think it's also it's just also it's just a theory that I also observe from other countries, is that is the strategy to attack men by using women.
Hmm.
And if and the rape is a good weapon to do it, because it really undermines your status as a man. So it's man to man fight. So if your woman is raped, then you feel your role as a man,
Mm-hmm.
and that superiority and authority is undermined by that. So I think that's my understanding.
That's very interesting. It's very interesting. You've also written about the USDP, and you spoke about them briefly earlier in the conversation. This is the political party that is connected to the military, and how they were pushing forward in previous years the race and religion protection laws. Can you describe those in fuller detail here, what exactly those were doing and what the reception of them were?
Mm-hmm. So there was the law is a package with four laws, and one of them is the monogamy, and the other laws are like reproductive, and essentially it aims to it targets the Muslim men marrying Myanmar women and having many wives. And the argument from the group, which is Mabata, and many of you may be aware, is that the Muslim population is growing and takes root in Myanmar society. So, as a Buddhist, you know, as a Buddhist society, they must do something to respond to it. And that they came up with, of course, there are a lot of other things that they did, but this is, in terms of women rights, this is that something that they came up, and they successfully lobbied the USDP, and they managed the president to sign off, eventually passed. So there were lots of criticism from the international society and also women rights organizations, because one of the laws said that if you are if you want to marry someone from different religions, you must seek approval from your fathers or from your guardians to marry. And the other person, has to convert the religion, etc. So it essentially undermines women and their decision making power, and it again also is a backlash to women freedom and rights in society. So there were a lot of resistance against those laws, but it passed, and it also was partly because there were growing anti-Muslim sentiments in the society, and for the lobby group, it wasn't very difficult for them to convince that it will do good for the Myanmar Buddhist women, and some of the women bought that because there was monogamy law in it, and they like that law because they were also desperate.
Mm-hmm. And it's worthwhile to note that monogamy was definitely practiced in earlier Burmese society. All of the Burmese kings are noted for all of the consorts and the queens and the princesses that they had. So this is certainly not something that's isolated to a non-Buddhist religion. But so to clarify, today in Myanmar, is it illegal for a Burmese woman to marry a Muslim man?
It's not illegal, but you have to seek permission from your parents, or your partner will have to convert to Buddhist, or to any religion. So I think I cannot say very specific component part of the law, but essentially it is a restriction for women to marry who they want, and for women to decide their own life.
And you mentioned this was promoted by the USDP. What about those years when the NLD got in and they were in greater leadership positions? What was their view on this public policy?
Well, this is something that I cannot make points, but this is something that some of the advocacy groups who were very close relationship with the policymakers, they have more insights on that. But in my view, and also talking to other people, there were a lot of hope from the rights groups to revoke these laws, and they must have advocated for it, and they were also advocating this POVAL law, Prevention of Anti-Violence Against Women law, to replace those 4 laws. But it never was actualized. And of course, there are lots of complications and discussions, but it never was successful.
Right, I see. So this coup that has been launched, it's nowhere near successful, and let's hope that it never is. But if, as a thought experiment, we were to live in a military-controlled Myanmar after 2021, how would you imagine them ruling specifically in regards to the issues that we've been discussing here?
Well, definitely many human rights violations. Unfortunately, we will continue seeing those tragic, stories. And but from our issues, for the issues that we have discussed, definitely it's not a good look, a good situation for women, especially we started already receiving and also hearing about all these sexual violence experiences in the detention center and in other conflict affected areas, even in the urban areas. There were lots of cases about alleged rapes and sexual harassment. But the thing is that nobody will be able to protect those issues. And although we are only hearing these types of things are happening, and I think it's not difficult to say that this is happening, because look what have they done to the ethnic minority women. Look what they have done to the Rohingya population, or Kachin, Rakhine, or other minority population. It's not something that we say it. There is already evidence that they did those horrible things, and they will continue to do it. And the problem is that protection, there is no protection, not just for women. This population as a whole, is a nightmare.
Yeah, it certainly is. And you have spent your career researching gender equality and women's rights in Myanmar. What are you hearing now about how female protesters and prisoners have been treated, and how is what they're facing now different from their male counterparts?
So we started seeing all these social media reports thanks to the MeToo movement that so I think that because this is the first time that I see that women are being openly discussing about these issues in the public. Uh, so, so in terms of the cultural or social norms landscape, it's a good progress. They started talking about it, openly, but but also on the other hand, this is the reality that that women are being treated harshly or beaten, uh, you know, compared to the male counterparts. And I would say that the military again is using, rape as a weapon again. This is again, going back to the, the men fight again. Because if you rape women, you not only destroy women, like you also intimidate the fathers, brothers. It's a it's a huge win for them.
Right.
So I think it's also a good strategy to intimidate women not to engage. In this type of thing. So I think that they are now using this weapon again, uh, and they are not afraid to use it because they have been doing it for a long time, but they have never been held accountable.
Right. Right. So you think that this is actually some sort of policy and order that's given from the top to use with real intention.
They wouldn't have this, this type of, how to say it. They are definitely using it as a weapon, but they wouldn't have the same interpretation as me because I interpret it more from the feminist perspective, but they definitely have the other perspective that is to harass everyone. And yeah.
There's been a lot of commentary about how the protest movement has brought together these disparate groups in ways we've never seen before, as well as how those with privilege, particularly from Burmese Buddhist men, are gaining awareness as from others about how their different background, how other different backgrounds have suffered, such as the Rohingya, and there's been public apologies and awareness on these issues. Are you finding anything similar regarding the issues we've been discussing here? So, in other words, have you seen any greater sensitivity or understanding on the part of men towards the issues that the women have long faced in society at this time of a more public reckoning?
Well, I think there is a small growing, small part of a growing population where they started, getting insights and enlightened by this event, and but they are this, they are from this demographic who is already, willing to accept all these things, all these, acceptance towards LGBT or acceptance towards women rights, etc. But what I'm more worried is the outside of social media, because that is the setting that where all these power dynamics play. So we can't be so sure that the fact that women are now in the front line of the protest they are actually fighting for the collective freedom, right? So when women are being part of the collective freedom, everyone appreciates, like because every vote counts now, because the main enemy is the military dictatorship. But I wonder, what if those women started fighting for the individual freedom? What would the men react to that? Because this is because when women ask for more individual freedom, that means that you have to let go, as a man, you have to let go of some of the privilege that you are enjoying, and the status will not be the same anymore. So that's the thing that I'm very interested most, but it has not, we have not come to this point yet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's why I was also wondering if even in the preliminary stages, there are men who are starting to recognize their privilege, because we have seen people from Burmese Buddhist backgrounds, especially young Generation Z, that is recognizing their privilege in terms of their privileged state of religion or their privileged state of ethnicity, and acknowledging that they have not suffered the ways that others have. And I think that probably, in all fairness, this is a bit easier to see and to grasp from this ethnic or religious background. That is something that can be acknowledged a bit more easily. But I'm also wondering, because this is a time of overall reckoning on many aspects, and definitely with the LGBT, we've seen that in new and in trans, and seeing how that's come about. That's been quite different from anything we've seen before. I'm wondering if even those preliminary steps of men in some form, especially Generation Z, starting to see like, oh, as a man, I'm privileged in ways I've never understood, and where that then translates into how that affects society and law and family and everything else, that's another discussion. But just in those preliminary opening stages of awareness, has anything like that come about that you've seen this year?
Yeah, I also you mentioned about LGBT community. It's also it's interesting given the suppression towards the LGBT community, that when they came out on the street, all dressed up, like, I think that the society as a whole, we take pride, in that, when we see LGBT community, fighting for the collective freedom, and there is, of course, this is the beginning, and the problem, but as we mentioned just now, is the Generation Z, right, where typically is present on social media, and also they are also the generation that is more exposed to the global discourses, and other different type of perspectives. They are more tolerant, but as we mentioned, will they translate into laws and policies in real life, or real life discussion? That will be something that no, that's very interesting, to see how would because if we look at the policymakers, they are more or less the generation, not Z, the older generation. They grew up with all these, how men should behave, and they only know two kind of sex, men and women. So I think that although we are seeing, these avenues, that that can be opportunities as a leverage, to be used in the later policy discussions. But it still is a good thing, I would say, to see LGBT involvement, it's a window. It's a window of opportunity, I would say, and they can always, make references of their participation. And as I said, I also use it as a leverage, to gain more acceptance and to gain, the equal treatment from the policymakers.
Right. Well, that's very interesting. And I thank you so much for joining us today to talk about these issues. It's been really wide ranging, going back all the way to talk about some of the historical structures and looking at the transitions of government, how that affected people and the family life in Burmese homes, and then understanding the implications since the coup of where all this lands there as well. So thank you so much for bringing all of your research and your thoughts and perspectives on this very important issue.
Oh, thank you also for giving me this platform, and also with stimulated by very thought-provoking questions. I enjoy the conversation a lot. Thank you.
And if you have found their story of value, please consider taking a further step beyond just being a listener and become an active supporter. Any donation you provide is now being sent to Myanmar to help those people being impacted by the current crisis. If you would like to join in our mission to support those in Myanmar who are resisting the military coup, we welcome your contribution in any form, currency, or transfer method. Every cent goes immediately and directly to funding those local communities who need it most. Donations go to support such causes as the Civil Disobedience Movement, CDM, families of deceased victims, and the purchasing of protective equipment and medical supplies. Or if you prefer, you can earmark your donation to go directly to the guest you just heard on today's show. In order to facilitate this donation work, we have registered a new nonprofit called Better Burma for this express purpose. Any donation you give on our Insight Myanmar website is now directed to this fund. Alternatively, you can visit our new Better Burma website, which is betterburma.org, and donate directly there. In either case, your donation goes to the same cause, and both websites accept credit cards. You can also give via PayPal by going to paypal.me/betterburma. Additionally, we can take donations through Patreon, Venmo, GoFundMe, and Cash App. Simply search Better Burma on each platform and you'll find our account. You can also visit either website for specific links to those respective accounts, or email us at info@betterburma.org. In all cases, that's Better Burma, one word, spelled BetterBurma. If you would like to give in another way, please contact us. Thank you so much for your kind consideration. You've been listening to the Insight Myanmar podcast. We'd appreciate it very much if you could rate, review, and/or share this podcast. Every little bit of feedback helps. You can also subscribe to the Insight Myanmar podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever else you get your podcasts to make sure you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes. If you can't find our feed on your podcast player, please just let us know and we'll ensure it can be offered there in the future. Also, make sure to check out our website for a list of our complete episodes, including additional text, videos, and other information available at insightmyanmar.org. And I also invite you to take a look at our new nonprofit organization at betterburma.org. There was certainly a lot to talk about in this episode, and we'd like to encourage listeners to keep the discussion going. Make a post, request specific questions, and join in on discussions currently going on the Insight Myanmar podcast Facebook group. You're also most welcome to follow our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter accounts by the same name. If you're not on social media, feel free to message us directly at info@insightmyanmar.org. Or if you'd like to start up a discussion group on another platform, let us know and we can share that forum here. Finally, we're open to suggestions about guests or topics for future episodes. So if you have someone or something in mind, please do be in touch. We would like to take this time to thank everyone who made this podcast possible. Currently, our team consists of 2 sound engineers, Mike Bink and Martin Combs. There's of course Zach Hessler, content collaborator and part-time co-host. Ken Pransky helps with editing, and a special Mongolian volunteer who is asked to remain anonymous does our social media templates. In light of the ongoing crisis in Myanmar, a number of volunteers have stepped in to lend a hand as well, and so we'd like to take this time to appreciate their effort in our time of need. And we're always on the lookout for more volunteers during this critical time, so if you'd like to contribute, definitely let us know. We'd also like to thank everyone who has assisted us in arranging for the guests we've interviewed so far. And of course, we send a big thank you to the guests themselves for agreeing to come on and share such personal, powerful stories. Finally, we're immensely grateful for the donors who made this entire thing possible. We want to remind our listeners that the opinions expressed by our guests are their own and don't necessarily reflect the host or other podcast contributors. Please also note that as we are mainly a volunteer team, we do not have the capacity to fact-check our guest interviews. By virtue of being invited on our show, there's a trust that they will be truthful and not misrepresent themselves or others. If you have any concerns about the statements made on this or other shows, please contact us. This recording is the exclusive right of Insight Myanmar podcast and may not be used without the expressed written permission of the podcast owner, which includes video, audio, written transcripts, or excerpts of any episodes. Also not meant to be used for commercial purposes. On the other hand, we're very open to collaboration. So if you have a particular idea in mind for sharing any of our podcasts or podcast-related information, please feel free to contact us with your proposal. If you would like to support our mission, we welcome your contribution. During this time of crisis, all donations now go towards supporting the protest movement in Myanmar through our new nonprofit, Better Burma. You may give by searching Better Burma on PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, GoFundMe, and Patreon, as well as via credit card at betterburma.org/donation. You can also give right on our Insight Myanmar website, as all donations given there are directed towards the same fund. And with that, we're off to work on the next show, so see you next episode.